Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's In a Talent Informational. Today, we have the pure pleasure of talking to Amit Garg on how to build a world-changing organization. Amit Garg has built his career in technology for over 20 years in the Silicon Valley. As a current venture capitalist, he focuses on seed stage applied AI investments in the fields of digital health, automation, and enterprise. He had some really cool key successes that are known as Newtonomy at Samsung Next Ventures and Misfit Wearables at Norwest Ventures. Outside of his work in technology and nonprofit, he's also a great speaker and has spoken at 3 TEDx's and at the Global Competitive Forum, and has also been selected as a young leader by the World Economic Forum. As you can see, he's a great addition to our In a Talent Informational series. And before I pass it off to Amit himself, I want to tell a little anecdote about my experience with Amit. I don't know if he even remembers this, but around 4 or 5 years ago, when In a Talent was first beginning as an idea, I had the opportunity to go visit him at Samsung Next Ventures and talk through the do's and don'ts on how to build an effective nonprofit organization. And so I know for a fact that he's got a lot of wisdom. So that's my own personal story on how being in his company has shaped something that is very near and dear to my heart. Amit, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and just tell us what's your story in a nutshell?
Oh boy. Well, thank you, Aina. First of all, hi everyone. Really grateful to be here. You guys are devoting your time here with me, and a big congrats to Aina for building this organization. I've been following this journey for, as she said, about 4 years. She has 2 big champions behind her. So Rocky and Kalpana have moved mountains, and it's kudos to you guys. It's a family effort, really. And I do notice a friend of mine on the call also, so let me just give him a shout out. Hey, Asim, hope you're doing well. My story, I guess, let me go back to the beginning. I was born and raised in Brazil. It's not obvious, I guess, looking at me, talking to me. There's a very, very strong community of Indians in Brazil, about 3 people, my dad, my mom, and me. They immigrated about 50 years ago. And I'm happy to tell you the story of how that happens, how their compass was off. Instead of going north, they went south. But I was born and raised in a small place called Vitória. No reason you guys should know. It's about an hour north of Rio. The background actually is Rio. We figured it's kind of pretty. And I did all my schooling there. I grew up speaking Hindi at home and Portuguese on the streets. So English is my 3rd language. I feel comfortable with all 3. At some point, we ended up going to the capital of Brazil. How that happened is a whole story in of itself. There was a dictatorship and a lot of crap happened. Happy to tell you guys if you're curious. But then I got a scholarship to high school, one of the best high schools in the city. And that gave me a platform to apply to universities here in the US. So I put my application in, and Stanford accepted me. So I came here for college, what is it now, 20 years ago? Gosh, 21 years ago. I did my undergrad in computer science and biology. I was a pre-med engineer. Happy to share that story. You know, how do you balance having different interests, or how do you think about doing pre-med? I ended up not becoming a doctor. I got into med school, but I decided that I still wanted to keep some of my other interests very much alive. So I ended up taking a different direction. I did a master's at the intersection of computer science and biology. And then after that, I went to Google. This is early days at Google, and ended up working there as a product manager for some folks that are now pretty famous. Marissa Meyer is one of them. You guys may be aware of her. She eventually became CEO of Yahoo. And I led Google Images and Google Photos, which at the time had, gosh, like 200 million users. And I didn't know that that wasn't normal. So I think most of you are in your teen years. I had the opportunity in my early 20s to be um, working with products that were used by 200 million people. Uh, my lesson here, and happy to share in more detail, is that if somebody gives you a rocket ship, don't ask questions, just get on it, because it's a once in a lifetime really opportunity that I got. Um, and after a few years at Google, I went to business school, went to that business school in Boston, froze for 2 years, decided that I kind of like the Bay Area weather better than Boston. Came back here and joined venture capital. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with venture capital, but happy to share a little bit more about my thought process, how I decided, how I thought, and what venture capital really means. I spent a few years at an organization called Norvis Ventures, and then ended up starting my own company. Happy to share that story also. And went back into venture capital, and now I've started my own venture capital fund. It's called Tau Ventures, and that story is the current story. It's very new. The fund is brand new, and yeah, I guess I'll mention one more thing, which is the nonprofit angle. About 20 years ago, as a freshman, I took a backpack and went into rural India and lived and worked there in the middle of nowhere, and decided to do something about it. So um, ended up building a hospital there over these years. It's a crowdfunded hospital serving a community of 100,000 people. And that's probably the one thing I've done in my life really worth talking about. So I hope you guys will ask questions about that, because I would love to share more about it.
So you recently started your own fund. How's that going?
So fundraising has the word fun in it. It's the biggest irony of the century. It's the least fun thing you'll do. And I've fundraised at this point for a startup. I fundraised for a nonprofit, and I've fundraised for a venture capital fund. Let me tell you, the venture capital is by far the worst. And this may be getting into too much detail, but it takes about 1,000 meetings over the course of years, couple of years, for you to raise a fund. And you hear about 99% of the people say no. So you have to have a huge amount of resilience, or as I like to call it, stupidity. So fundraising was not fun. We did it because we had to. What is a lot of fun is taking that capital and putting it to work. And just to give you some metrics here, it's me and a partner, so two of us. We're looking at 1,000 companies a year each. So every day I'm looking at maybe 3 or 4 companies. And it's a lot of mental processing, because you get a lot of information, and everybody you talk to is 10 times smarter than you about what they are doing. What I am probably better is understanding patterns, understanding potential futures. And so I look at those companies and I go, okay, what's the market? What's the team? What's the technology? What's the competition? What is the exit? Meaning, how could they actually one day be sold or go public? What is missing? How well would they work with me? What are other companies in my portfolio? How would they fit in there? And so it's really like looking at an eclipse of the moon and Mars and the sun and all the planets aligned. Like everything needs to be at a place where you go, I have enough conviction that yes, there are risks here, but I can mitigate those risks and I can really help the company. So you end up actually betting on, in our case, 4 or 5 companies a year. So if you think about it, it's harder to get a VC investment than to get into Stanford or Harvard. Now, there are many VCs out there. So the good news is somebody will invest in you, but that particular VC investing in you is actually pretty rare. And what we have established of ourselves is we are very good at certain things. So I'm not doing everything. I do not understand, just to pick on something here, I do not understand agriculture. There are many companies that are trying to build robots for agriculture. We're not focused on that. Actually, my partner understands more, so he's looking at that segment. But I understand health. I understand it very well. I built a company in health. So when I'm looking at companies, a lot of them are around health. And I've seen thousands of companies at this point that try to sell into healthcare, that try to hire people into healthcare, and I'll give a couple of examples here. We have 3 companies in cancer. One that's trying to build drugs against cancer, one that's trying to treat people around cancer, one that's trying to diagnose around cancer. So when I look at those things, I really have so enough expertise that I'm able to judge and understand, okay, this could actually work. And in those cases where we end up taking the bet, we go off the bat for our companies. And that's actually a privilege. So to go back to Asim's original question, being a venture capitalist in some ways is horrible, but in other ways it's a lot of fun. And it's actually really a privilege because society has kind of given me, trusted me with money to be able to make these decisions that can hopefully improve society for all of us.
Well, before I continue with my questions, I do want to turn it over to the audience. Does the audience have any questions based off of all the cool stuff that we've heard?
So you mentioned that you started a company. I was just wondering a little bit more about what doing that is like and how was the experience like for you?
I would love to actually loop in Asim to respond to that question also, because he has started multiple companies. I've only started really one company, but the way we did it is first and foremost building a team, and really having a co-founder, at least one co-founder, is almost critical. I wouldn't say that you can't build a company by yourself. You can. There's a few good examples out there. Amazon, for instance, is essentially one person who started it. He hired lots of people around him, but he was the only founder. But most companies, you name it, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, most of them had multiple co-founders. So I spent a lot of time looking for a co-founder. And the best analogy I have for you is dating, really. You date a lot of people. The difference from dating is that you're okay telling other people you're dating multiple people. So it's okay to go and date 10 people at the same time. And you really try to find a fit. Does this person have the right skill set that I'm looking for? Does this person work well with me? Does this person have the right mindset, right? Like they may be great, but they might have 2 kids and be stuck in New York City at 9:30 p.m. and going to bed, right? They may not have the risk profile. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, that's the scene. So you have to find just the perfect alignment of economic interest, capability, expertise. And once you find a team, then oftentimes you noodle on ideas together. So you may think of, okay, I have this, I want to build this. You try it and it doesn't work out. So you then change your idea, and in Silicon Valley lingo, you pivot. So this is pretty common that try many ideas. We ended up trying at least 5 or 6 ideas. We ended up pitching an idea and getting money on an idea that we ended up not building. We actually told our investors that, hey, look, this is what we're going to build, but we might change our idea. So make sure you're okay with giving us money. And we did, but we ended up building an idea finally that we believed in. And many people have written about this, but I think the key thing is you cast a wide funnel, but once you decide, you go all in. So once we decided we were going to build this idea, we went all in, 101%, and really tried to make it successful. And I'll give you one data point here, which may resonate with all of us. When I was building this company, for about a year, I did not leave the Bay Area. I didn't even pick up my car and drive over an hour away. I was so engrossed in what I was building. I was living under a rock, basically. So all I did was the company, 100%. I didn't even take a car and leave over an hour away, which at the time seemed crazy. Nowadays, it seems like, okay, this is kind of normal. I can't leave the Bay Area over an hour away with the pandemic. But hopefully that answers your question, Sejal.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Let me pass it over to Asim. He has built, by my count, 3 companies at this point. So he may have some shared lessons here too.
I won't take up very long of your time, Amit. I think one thing to reiterate is what Amit said about it is like dating. Finding a co-founder is super important, mostly because the ups and downs are brutal. You know, like one day you're top of the world, and next day you're like, oh my God, like I've just wasted, a year of my life. And that's when you need that person next to you, because it's just a lot easier to go through it together with someone.
If you guys have watched Hunger Games, the odds are not in your favor. They are seriously not in your favor. 90% chance that you will fail, maybe even more than that.
Yeah, so I noticed how you talked a lot about how you put a lot of hours into your business, like into your new startup. So I was just wondering, how would you define success for you and your company?
Um, how do you define success? That's a very deep question, actually. Um, so, look, at a practical level, success is I put in money into the company, I help them succeed, and they eventually either go get sold or go public. Going public, by the way, is the exception. Maybe 1% of the companies goes public. And what I owned of that company ends up being a profit. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I put in $1 million into a company and it was worth 5 million. So I own 20% of the company. At some point, this company continues growing and gets sold for, let's say, 100 million. Assuming that I didn't put more money, assuming I didn't raise more money, my 20% is worth now 20 million, right? So my 1 million became 20 million. What I will do is I'll take part of this money, a big part of this money, and give it back to my own investors, all the people who gave me money, and I'll keep a little portion of it. So at a practical level, success means that I ended up returning more money than I put in. But I want something better than that. So for me, the metric is I want to be able to return 3 times more money. So the amount of money that was put into me, I made a bunch of investments, I collect those profits, and I return at least 3x more profits. That is my bar for calling it successful. Calling it very successful, I want to do 5x. So being able to increase what people put into me by 5x. Venture capital is really, really one of the very few things that allows you to have that kind of return, because most things will have a return of maybe percentage points. Like if you invest in the public market, most of the time you're looking to grow your money by 5 to 10% a year. Here I'm talking about growing your money by 300%. Obviously it's over a little bit longer time, but that's the possibility. The downside is a lot of things that I will do will end up not returning money. So what ends up happening in venture capital is that a percentage of the companies will end up returning a lot of money, and a much larger percentage ends up returning very little money or sometimes no money at all. So it's a very much the term in the industry, the term in mathematics, it's power law. There's very much power laws and asymmetric distributions in venture capital, where a small percentage of companies are disproportionately responsible for the majority of the returns. And that actually happens with investors also. A small percentage of investors are disproportionately responsible for the majority of the successes. So where I'm going with this is success for me is to be an exception. Success for me is to be basically in the small group of people, of funds, call it the 10 to 20% top funds. And look, I come from an Indian family, like many of you. So anything short of an A is enough. So that's what I'm hoping for here, is basically to be in the top 10%.
Yeah, so basically, I know how you're talking about how, like 90% of startups don't make it in like either their first round or second round. So what do venture capitalists usually look for in a startup? Like what's the one thing they say like, wow, this is the company that I want to invest in?
Depending on who you ask, they will give you different answers. But I think that at the end of the day, Asim already answered this question. There's only 3 things that matter. Just like when you're buying a house or real estate, location, 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 right? For a startup, there's only 3 things that matter: team, team, team. Because you can have a fantastic idea, you can have tons of money, you could be in a great market, you could have no competition, but if your team sucks, no matter what you do, you're not going to succeed. And the flip side is maybe your market is tough, maybe your product is challenging, maybe your competition is high, maybe you don't have much money, but you have got the most amazing team in the world. You will figure a way out. So I like to say an A+ team is always better, even if they have a B idea or a C idea, it's always better to bet on than a B team with an A+ idea, because the B team will always be limited by their capability. Now, let me add some nuance to this. At the early stage, when a company is really small, the team matters absolutely predominantly humongously. There's almost nothing else that matters. As a company grows, other things start mattering, never at the expense of the team, but the relative importance reduces. So if you're looking at a company that is maybe 100 people, any one person is not going to make or break the company, but a contract that that company might have may be crucial. So what ends up happening is the importance of team goes down, but never below any other factor. And the importance of your business model, of your product, of your traction, of your technology, of your competition goes up with time. So depending on what VC you talk to, where they come in, they'll weigh these different factors differently.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, so I actually have two questions for you, but before I say them, thank you so much for taking your time and like talking to us. Super awesome to hear from someone who's worked and had a lot of success in the field already, right? The first question I have is from the VC perspective. When you something that I've heard a lot from several VCs is basically the thing that makes you successful as a VC is deal flow that's very different, right? Every VC will be able to see the standard set of companies, but it's about finding those companies that are like unique and not everyone has already seen and put like tons of money into. What is your methodology for actually finding that kind of deal flow?
Yeah, so I will actually answer your question in two parts because what you said is true, but it's not the complete truth because a lot of people may see the same deals and not do the deal. So there's also taking a bet when nobody else is taking that bet, even if many people have seen that company, or the flip side, not taking the bet when a lot of people are taking that bet. So I call it basically being a little contrarian. You want to basically do things that are at the edge. If it's something that everybody believes in, chances are that it's too obvious. If it's something that nobody believes in, chances are that it's just not doable. But if it's something that's right at the edge where some people believe in it, some people don't. And that happens, by the way, within a VC firm also. What is not as visible to entrepreneurs is the immense amount of debates that go on inside a VC firm. Like my partner and I will spend hours debating something, researching something, literally 100 hours worth of work, writing a document to make a decision, yes or no, right? So now that I've said all of that, let me answer your question specifically. In terms of deal flow, there's many different ways. One is all your previous networks, the schools you went to, the companies you worked for, your neighbors, your friends, people who have heard of you. All of that is fair game. And if you are working in tech like I am, and you came from other tech companies, invariably you have very strong networks. Like my network is very strong from Google and its diaspora, but not exclusively. I get some deal flow from my universities, and my partner is a complementary background to me. He went to Microsoft, he was an MIT grad. So the two of us, when we decided to work together, we looked at that and look, we have different networks. Second thing, we'll have co-investors. So investments are actually in venture capital a lot more collaborative than competitive, especially at an early stage. So it's not like I'm putting money into this company, I don't want anybody else to put money. What usually happens, especially when a company is small, is say, hey, look, I'm going to put money here and I want somebody else to put money in because I want somebody else to be helping the company. And two investors coming in de-risks for both of them. So what ends up happening is I have co-invested now with probably hundreds of other investors. And some of them I'm very close to. So they will send me deals, I'll send them deals. Sometimes I'll send them a deal and say, hey, look, it's not a fit for me, but I know that this could be interesting to you. Or, hey, this deal is too early for me, but it's probably a right stage for you. Or, hey, this deal is too late for me, but it's probably just the right stage for you. Or, hey, this deal is, we're doing it and we want somebody else to come in with us. So this back and forth, this trading of deals reminds me a little bit of like a board game, happens all the time. And that is another source. The third source of deals is advisors for us. We have a very strong group of people around us that are not invested in the fund. They're not people we are investing in, but it's people that want to know what we're doing, want to learn, want to use our help, and we want to use their help also. So I think Rocky, your sister, is on the call. So she, for instance, a few years back, I was building a company. I needed help in the diabetes space and understanding what was going on. And so Rocky very generously connected me to his sister. I got some back, right? Like I have multiple advisors like this that day in and day out will send me things, will send me articles, will send me companies, and I'll do that. So being a venture capitalist is a little bit of being a social magnet. Like a lot of people talk to you and you talk to a lot of people. But you have to be very selective because you can go crazy. You can end up talking to 1,000 people and not go anywhere. So you have to be very careful in how, when, who, what you interact with. And then the fourth thing is the I would say outbound presence you have. So I write a lot, I publish it, I go to conferences, I go to events, and people get to know what we stand for, what we're doing, so they will reach out to us. And it's a little bit uneven because when everybody reaches out to you, you can't necessarily say this is going to be high quality or not. But some good things come through also. So I would say those are the four big ways.
The second thing I was just going to mention, and I thought it was an important part of when I see money flows, but smart money. You might want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it's a great question. Venture capital has two words: venture and capital. I think the word capital is the least interesting. You obviously need money. You always need money to build a company, to pay your employees, to do whatever, right? But the venture part is, I think, far more important. Venture means you venture out in the world. I like to even add the word adventure. You have your own adventure, right? What a venture capitalist, I believe, should really do, the best ones, is help you build the company. They will open up doors for you. They'll connect you to potential customers. They'll connect you to potential hires. They'll give you feedback on your product. They'll hold your feet to the fire when you're doing something they don't agree with. So it's called governance. They'll serve on the board. They will do board meetings where they will get regular updates. They'll be there for you when things go bad. And things go bad all the time. You don't get that contract. You have a fight with your co-founder, right? All these things. Your VC, a good VC, is really married to you. And I like to joke that hiring and firing an employee is hard. Hiring and firing a VC is even harder because you can't get rid of the VC easily. They are owners in the company with you. If they own a part of the company, how do you get rid of them? The only way, by the way, is forcing them to sell their ownership, which is a whole big mess. So choose your investors wisely. And I tell all entrepreneurs, do your diligence on the investor also. If you are not doing diligence on the investor, then I have less conviction in you because you're signing up with anyone. And I think that smart money is really the way to go. Like, look, if you know what you're doing, you don't need any help, by all means, my blessings, go raise money, but then don't go to venture capital because you're wasting your time on it. You're going to spend far more time and effort, and honestly, it doesn't serve you. If you want just money, get a loan from a bank. Go talk to a grant, get a grant, or get a corporate perhaps to give you something in. Well, that's another issue, but corporates can sometimes dictate your agenda. But there's many other ways of getting money that are not venture capital. Remember, venture capital is only 1% of all the investments out there. So if you are in Silicon Valley and probably in some parts of the East Coast like Boston and New York, you hear the word venture capital a lot. It's actually the exception, not the rule.
I had two questions. The first question was, if a person has a product idea, do you have any advice on how do they get started on building the product? And second question is, would a venture capitalist like you, would they be turned away from a product because the team hasn't started building the product, or would you guys be turned away by the progress of the product?
Yeah, so venture capitalists come in many flavors. There's the terms in the industry are seed, Series A, Series B, Series C. All they indicate is stage. When you're two people in a garage, these days we call them pre-seed, by the way, but it used to be called seed. So two people in a garage, you pretty much have a PowerPoint. You don't have anything else. At a seed stage these days, you may have a prototype. So you have something more than a product idea, but something less than a product, right? Like you have a frame. Maybe you don't have the wheels on it, but you have the frame. At a Series A, then you have a product. You have what is called a product market fit, where you're taking the product and putting it in front of potential users. Now, I'm giving you a framework here. It's very general. There's always exceptions to this, but that's a good way of thinking about the world. I focus on seed. So, and I focus specifically on what I call mature seeds. So I focus on you are just almost there in terms of getting a product market fit. So I like to see almost a product fully built. Or maybe you have a contract, you're building the product to get, and you have the contract for it already. Or I need to see that there's some substance to what you're doing. There are investors that focus earlier. They're called venture capitalists, but there's another term. Venture capital implies you're investing other people's money. There's another term called angel investors. Angel investors are investing their own money. And angel investors tend to come in earlier than venture capitalists. So I know you very well, and now you're going out and have a product idea. I'll say, hey, Keshav, you know what? I've known you for so many years, like you. Here's $50,000. I'll take a bet on you. And I would like you to get to the stage where you raise $1 million, and then you raise from a venture capitalist. So typically, if you have a product idea, you go far more to angels and a little bit to VCs. At the next stage, you go far more to VCs than to angels. Oh, sorry, you had another question, which is, how do you go ahead and build a product idea? Honestly, you answered your own question, which is you just go ahead and go build the idea. If you don't have enough conviction to go ahead and build the idea, then an investor certainly won't have conviction. So what ends up happening a lot is somebody is working at a company, they like an idea, they'll start building it on the side. And at some point, they'll go talk to an investor and say, hey, look, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to build this idea full time and I'll need money. Will you invest in me? And they will say, yes, invest in you once you quit your company. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, except that the chicken comes before the egg in this case, because it's very, very hard for you to get the money until you're full-time building that company, until you're full-time building that product.
Today, but I have two questions, if I could ask both. The first one is, what is the greatest piece of advice you've received in your career? And the second one is, what is the most rewarding risk you've taken as a venture capitalist?
Wow, the most rewarding piece of career advice. I mean, this is a real cliche, but I think the best pieces of advice I got were come from my parents and from my mentors, which include my teachers in high school, include my professors in college, include my ex-bosses. And they may say this in different ways, but it all boils down to literally believe in yourself, right? Like, if you don't know something, figure out a way to learn it. And I'll be honest with you, 99% of what I've learned in college and high school and beyond is garbage, is useless. I don't use it on a day-to-day basis. But the way of thinking about it, the way to learn and unlearn, that stays with me. So I'm very much in favor of getting as much education as you can, because the value of education is, to me, less about the knowledge, less about the facts, but much more about critical thinking, the drive to learn, the aptitude, the connections you build. So I think that's the best advice I've gotten, is like, always think that you can do it. But specifically in venture capital, the best bets, I think it has to be the company that Aina mentioned. It's a self-driving car company called Autonomy. When I was making that investment, I had spent about 100 hours already, and most VCs had not taken that bet. The company had talked to many people, but I did a pretty deep technical analysis, and I went and asked many questions. I would say, I like to call it 5 whys. You ask a why, then you ask a why, then you ask a why. You keep asking why until you get to the heart of what they're doing. And I asked many whys, and I got to a very simple, but what I thought was critical insight, which is that that company needed 10 times less data in order to train the car to make decisions. Kind of like the Tesla. You guys must have seen Teslas out there on the highway. They can drive by themselves, right? So these guys I saw needed 10 times less data to train their cars. So I argued with my own partners that, hey, look, these guys will be able to get to market faster. They'll be able to scale faster. They have built something here that's very unique, and we should take a bet into them. And I got a lot of pushback. And it came down to basically my boss's boss was not in favor of doing the deal. And I got everybody in the room to basically say, no, we should do the deal. So my boss's boss eventually went, you know what? I don't like it, but all of you seem to like it. So go ahead. So we did. And it ended up being the best deal we had done for the fund. The company got sold 2 years later for $450 million. So not don't worry, I didn't make any money personally, so don't get too excited. But the founders did. And what ends up happening is the founders then decided that I was a good dude, I did good things for them. So when I went ahead and built my own company, they are backing me now. So what ends up happening a lot in venture capital and startups is, I like to say, it's a recurring play. It's not what you're doing today. It's over and over. You're going to run into the same people. You're going to talk to them at the same side or the other side of the table. And I think that's actually true of life in general. The people you meet today, you'll be building a relationship with them for the rest of your life.
I do want to bring it back to the titular question. How does one go forth and build a world-changing organization? What are some key things to consider? What are some major red flags? What are some emerging markets to look into? Take that question with what you will, and really inspire these young budding entrepreneurs.
Oh boy, it goes both ways. Look, you guys, I'm gonna sound so old, but you guys are the future. So everybody has something to offer, and you guys will be teaching me things too. So don't hesitate to teach me something also beyond this call. You guys will do amazing things. Tell me about them too, and help me be better. But let me take the example that we haven't talked at all about, that I do want to talk about, which is my nonprofit. So I was 19, and I was finishing up freshman year in college. And for a variety of reasons, I decided to take a backpack and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to do something a little kooky, because I can do something kooky now. I also didn't know how risky these things were. So it's better to do these things when you don't know, don't have full knowledge. So I went into the middle of nowhere, like middle of villages that had no water, no electricity. And I saw tons and tons of problems. And I decided I wanted to do something to help them. Not just a short-term help, but really a long-term help. Really, not teach them how to fish, but change the fishing industry. I think this whole dichotomy about, do you give somebody a fish or teach them how to fish? I think it's wrong. I think you actually change the fishing industry. That's how you make a sustainable impact. So the way to change the fishing industry there was to build more infrastructure, give people the ability to get education, give people the ability to get healthcare, give people the opportunity, the dignity of opportunity, and the opportunity of dignity. But one guy, 19 years of age, I wasn't even American at the time. I had my own schooling to worry. Like, it's a little nutty, honestly. It's a little nutty to say, okay, I'm going to go and try to do something about it. So when I came back to college, I started small. I started really small. I started really modestly. I just took over a student organization in college. And I started training more of my classmates to go volunteer in this place that I went. That's very achievable by a 19 or 20-year-old. It's like, hey, I'm just going to help you have the same experience I had. Then I said, okay, you know what? Now that 20 of us have done this, let's start raising a little bit of money to help those guys out. So we raised $2,000, which honestly is not that big of a deal, right? You knock on 100 doors and get everybody to give you $10, $20. You raise $2,000. That's what we did. But I started building basically slowly but surely a group of people that was committed to an idea that started working together. And eventually, once we graduated from college, I said, okay, guys, look, we've been working together now for 4 years. We're doing this on the side. We work well together. Let's do something bigger. So let's tackle another project. And slowly but surely, we started increasing the scope of our actions. And at some point, we said, look, let's just become a nonprofit of ourselves, right? Like, why bother just doing this as individuals? Let's just incorporate as a nonprofit. And if that's going to take too much work, let's work with another organization that will sponsor us. So instead of reinventing the wheel, I leveraged everything around me as much as I could to basically add one brick at a time, one brick at a time, one brick at a time. And then I put in 20 years into this project. At this point, we have a hospital. It's serving 100,000 people. We've had 50,000 patients come in the last 7 years. We have a doctor, we have a nurse, we have a physician's assistant. We put solar panels there. We have powered the whole region, schools, the hospital. We have built a sister organization. We have one in Norway, one in Sweden. We have 350,000 followers on Facebook. I've spoken about this work in multiple places. And it all sounds like, honestly, if I ever talk to my 19-year-old self about all of this, I'm 100% sure I would look at myself and go, this is nuts. It's not achievable. And it is not achievable in one day, but it is achievable over the course of 20 years. So how do you build a world-class organizations? Honestly, persistence. That's it. You don't need to be super rich. You don't need to be even super capable. You need to find a right set of people and just continue hammering it. Just continue hammering it. Because I think that story about the hare and the tortoise is really true. You guys must know that story, right? It's not necessarily the fastest. It's the guy who just keeps at it. And Vince Lombardi has a great quote. It's victory goes eventually to the person who believes he or she can win. So did I inspire? Was that inspirational enough?
I definitely was. I don't know. Does anyone want to say their 2 cents on or just have anything to say to Amit?
Well, I actually just had one last question. So I noticed how you talked about how the majority of startups fail, like 90%, and it also takes a really long time to decide on who you want to invest in. So like what I'm wondering is what entrepreneurial tactics make the biggest difference in startups failing or succeeding that you invested in?
I think we've touched upon a few of these things in the call, but I think more so than tactics, it's mindset. It's the mindset of, I believe in this. It's holding a contradictory idea that I believe in what I'm doing so much that I'm willing to put time, effort, money, energy, even if there's many people around me saying it's not going to work. So I'm going to be a little crazy. But at the same time, I'm going to be humble enough that I know all of this could fail and that I need to listen to other people with advice and I need to find other people to work on it with me. So it's a very, very fine balance in holding two contradictory ideas. And it's almost like a paradox. And there's some great books about this. There's one that talks about level 5 leadership. And level 5 leadership is basically somebody who is so sure about what they're doing that they will lead people through fire, but at the same time, they are so unsure about themselves that they will be willing to learn from everyone. So I think that is the ultimate thing about being an entrepreneur. Everything stems from that mindset. If you are a genius, you won 5 Nobel Prizes, but you don't have that mindset, you will fail. Because a startup is inherently not about having a brilliant insight. It's not about a short run. Like it's not a 100-meter dash. It's a marathon. It's actually not even a marathon. It's a series of marathons. So if you're great at running a 100-meter dash because you're the most talented person in the world, sure, you'll succeed in that. But to run a series of marathons, you need to actually be open to other ideas, but yet continue believing that you can win.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for like speaking and inspiring us all. Honestly, it was really fun to learn something new about business, especially. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. My fund is called taoventures.com, Tao Ventures. I'm recruiting all of you now to give me a like on Facebook, to give me a like on LinkedIn. Um, and it will help us get more visibility. We're a super new fund. It's a startup in of itself. And look, if you guys start a company, not if, when, please keep me in mind. You have friends, uncles, aunts, parents, best friend's father, mother that are starting a company that could be interesting to us, please feel free to tell them about us. And if I may, I would love to also take a like on Hospital for Hope. That's the nonprofit. You guys can see the website, hospitalforhope.org. And on Facebook, it's Hospital for Hope. And your like will actually help me basically blabber to a donor and say, look, we have 350,014 likes, so you should give us some money. So it helps me in fundraising.
Okay, yeah, once again, just thank you for talking to us today. And I had a quick question. So it's not really about venture capitalism, but throughout your journey, it seems like you've taken a lot of big steps, like starting a hospital or deciding that you didn't want to do med school and starting your own business. And I just want to know how you decided and took those steps to do something big. Like, how did you motivate yourself?
You're too kind. It's not just me, honestly. Anybody who says that it's all because of them, they're lying to themselves and to you. I have a whole big village behind me, huge. My parents, my relatives, my friends, my mentors, my bosses. I mean, there's thousands of people who allow me to be and allow me to be here and allow me to be who I am. So I think whenever I make a decision, having at least enough people to support that decision is absolutely key. I told my parents, I want to go to Google instead of med school, even though I had actually got into med school, and they were very supportive. If I hadn't had their support, I don't think I would have made it, right? You would most likely talking to Dr. Garg right now. And when I was looking to build a business, I talked to my boss, and my boss said, "No, Amit, I think you have what it takes," right? So you can't talk to everyone about everything, but you need to talk to the right people for the right things, right? And my wife, for instance, she is my life partner, and she is very supportive of what I'm doing right now. If she wasn't supportive, there's no way I could build this. There's no way I could build a fund. So I think behind every great person, there's a whole big village. And I'm very, very blessed in the village I have. And I think that's something that all of us can do. I cultivate my village. I am unconsciously and consciously always making sure that I have amazing folks behind my village who can give me advice, who can give me support. And you guys are now part of it too. Aina, Rocky, and Kalpana were already. You guys are also part of it. So yeah, the fiction that is given to us is that one person has a deep insight and takes a leap of faith. That's absolute bullshit. Sorry for the bad word. It's never that. It's always the tip of the iceberg of what's behind that person.
Okay, thank you so much.
So when you're looking at a product idea, one thing is, how do you research into the competition, and what is the point where you decide okay, this competition is just too strong, it doesn't make sense to go continue with this product idea?
Oh, that's about holding contradictory ideas, right? It's how much do you hammer this nail because you think the nail will go through versus saying, okay, this is not working, I need to do something different, right? So a lot of it is a very fine balance in how much time you have given, how many people you have talked to, how much traction you have obtained. If you have spent, as an example, 6 months trying to get a contract and no contract has come through, and you know that on average, for what you're building, you should be getting a contract in maybe 3 or 4 months, chances are something is wrong, either in how you're pitching, so your style, or in substance, meaning what you're building.